My name is Ellen Widmer, and I'm replacing Brad Smith just for this 1 week. He has some family business out of town. I want to welcome all of you to the 5th evening of the 76th season of the Amos Fortune Forum. I have just a few introductory remarks, and I'll keep them short, including a few that's mainly housekeeping items. So we want to thank Tony Gildone and Sam Green for sponsoring the beautiful flower arrangement. And we'd like to thank Betsy Trimble and Jenda Trimble for hosting the reception following tonight's presentation. We hope you will join us so you can meet our speakers and enjoy some light refreshments. Follow the lanterns just outside the door across the parking lot to the First Church in Jaffrey's Parish House. We would like to thank our generous corporate sponsors and the many individual contributors without whom we would not be able to continue this important and vibrant forum of ideas. At the doors and on your seats, you will find cards that you can either fill out or scan the QR code with your phone to link to our website, where you can learn more about the forum and upcoming speakers. Sign up for our email list or make a donation. There are also our traditional begging bowls at each door. And we encourage those who have not already given this year to make a donation. The Amos Fortune Forum remains free for all to attend, as it has been since 1946. And we set up chairs and tables outside each week, weather permitting, for those who would like to come early and bring a picnic dinner or stay outside during the presentation, which will be amplified. We hope this becomes another part of the tradition of the Amos Fortune Forum. Weather not too good tonight, but it's still an ongoing idea. We are live streaming and recording tonight's presentation for those who are not nearby or who aren't able to attend. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Eric Stange. Eric is the film's director and will be interviewing the Pony Boys, Tony and Jeff Whittemore.
Thank you, Ellen, very much. Thank you, everybody. It's a real honor to be here. It's a very distinguished series, and we're really happy to be part of it. I'm not going to say a lot. I'm going to let the film speak for itself, and then we'll have time afterwards to hear from Tony and Jeff Whittemore, who, as many of you know, have long Jaffrey ties. We're also very happy to have their sister Wendy here, who you'll see in the film as well. And, well, I'll ask them questions, but we'll also open it up to the audience for questions as well. I will say a couple of things. I've made documentary films for many years, and as we all know, documentaries tend to be serious often. Not that they can't be fun and funny and lively and all that, but generally, documentaries take on important issues. This documentary, I feel, takes on important issues, but it is such a wonderful, lighthearted, warm story that it was just a joy to make. And it's rare in all lines of work. I'm sorry? I thought I heard somebody. So this film has been just such a pleasure, and it's wonderful to bring it to audiences like you. But this is the first time that we've actually shown the film in a place where the Pony Boys came through, not to mention where they have family connections. So for those reasons, it is really special to be here. So we will watch Pony Boys and then have a chance to talk afterwards. Thank you.
Expo 67 or bust. This sign was tacked on the back of a pony cart driven by one of these three young men. What is your name, please?
My name is Tony Whittemore. My name is Tony Whittemore. My name is Tony Whittemore.
My name is Tony Whittemore.
Only one of these young men is the real Tony Whittemore.
And in the spring of 1967, the principal of my school told my mother that I could not read a map.
100 people in our studio audience are to tell the truth.
And from that, the journey began.
I was 9. My brother Tony was 11 in the spring of 67. I remember I came into the kitchen. My mother was standing at the counter, and she wanted to talk to me, and my brother Tony said, Jeff, you want to go to the World's Fair in Montreal? And I didn't even know what the World's Fair was. I was 9 years old.
The largest World's Fair ever, Expo 67. The International Twin Island Wonderland is ready for its gala opening ceremony. Host Canada is among 62 nations.
I just really wanted to go to the Expo. And if I got the bug in my ear, then my mother was never hearing the end of the fact. We lived in Needham, just outside of Boston. There was no way financially that we were going to be able to do the 400 miles to get to Montreal. But you couldn't tell my mother something couldn't be done. And I know she was really irritated that Mr. Jenkins said that I couldn't read a map.
It seemed like they had already discussed it, and we were going to go to Montreal, Expo 67. We're going to take the pony cart. We're going to go by pony cart. So they explained it to me, and it sounded like fun. It sounded like Disney World.
It was our ticket to go to Montreal. I had no idea that it would turn into what it turned into. My dad, bless his heart, was the squarest guy on planet Earth. He just was. He was just super square. Opposites attract. My mother was different. You know, we did stuff that other kids didn't do. The kids across the street, they had plastic on their furniture. At my house, you could play soccer in the living room.
My mother always thought a little bit outside the box, as they say. Learning by doing was really important for her. My father, although there was, I think, some disapproval there, he tried to withhold judgment as far as allowing some things that he might have been a little fearful about, like this trip.
I have no idea when my mother broke the news to him that, yeah, his two sons, 9 and 11, were going to take the Shetland pony and a pony cart up to Montreal from Needham.
We had a pony that we used for delivering newspapers and pony rides for birthdays.
King was our pet. He was part of the family. We all loved him.
King, he was a sweet pony. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He was just gentle, which we later learned was unusual for a Shetland pony. My mother indicated that we needed to start planning.
We started doing the small stuff, you know, working with running King and getting him into good condition. My mother did the big stuff.
She put the tent together. There was a basket under the seat of the pony cart. We had our clothes in that. She planned the whole thing out.
American Automotive Association, they provided us with maps and triptychs and information.
Tony and I learned to read maps. We could see the cities, the towns, the route we were going to take. We got good at it.
And Mom wrote to all of the townships that we would go through to let them know that we were coming and to please be on the lookout.
So the plan was on the 4th of July, we ride the pony cart in the Needham Parade, and then the following day we pack up and we head to Montreal. It was exciting. It was all really exciting. I think my mother did a very brave thing in letting us go.
I mean, I look back and remember when my children were 11 and 9. Would I have let them go? I'm not sure. But she had absolute faith that with proper preparation, we would get this done.
The day we left, my memory of it is just the thrill of being in the cart, hearing that clippity-clop king. We were on this trip, on this adventure, no idea where it was gonna go. We got our maps, we looked at the maps, we were off.
I really didn't believe when we kicked off and left the driveway on the 5th that this was that extraordinary. It never entered my mind that it could be dangerous. I always thought that it was going to be a lot of fun.
That day, I think in the afternoon, we were caught in a brief but torrential rain. We had these little straw hats. They got soggy. And the smell of a rainstorm in a hot summer, I can smell it now. The sun came out after the rain. It turned into a beautiful day. Day 2 of our trip, trudging up the hills. That was a very hilly part of the trip. King, we were probably walking him, trotting him, walking him. And my brother and I noticed that we were being followed by a car.
And it followed us for a couple of hours, and it started to make us a little nervous.
King goes 5 miles an hour. He's quite slow. A car would not just follow us for 2 miles, we'd be passed. At that point, my brother and I, we were nervous and afraid. We said, don't look, don't turn around.
As we got into a populated area, I decided that I needed to find out who they were. So I got out of the cart and went back and spoke with them. As it turns out, it was a reporter and staff photographer for the Boston Globe.
That was our first introduction to any of the reporters.
Jeff was a remarkable companion, but he really didn't like to talk to the press. I've always been a smiley loudmouth, so I really didn't have any trouble talking to the press. But we just didn't understand what was going on. You have nothing better to do than to follow 2 little kids on their way to Expo?
I have no idea why the press was so fascinated by this trip. The amount of attention and the amount of reporters that were following us, the trip definitely tickled something.
I was very surprised at how much press they got because in the family I grew up in, a trip like that did not feel press-worthy. But when you consider what else was in the news that summer, I think people just craved following a fun and feel-good story like the Pony Boys.
Oftentimes, people would stop and talk with us. They would walk alongside with us, and we got a lot of personal attention from people.
I remember people passing us and then pulling over. Especially as we approached the town. There'd be crowds walking with us. The first 5 or 6 days, we knew where we were staying. And then I can't remember how we knew where we were staying the rest of the trip.
As the day started to end and we had put enough miles in, we would look for a house that had fencing around it, like they had animals. You know, it's hard to say exactly, but it had a friendly vibe. The first night we actually knocked on somebody's door. It was a little nerve-wracking, but that first night we stayed with a nice family, and after that, you know, if somebody turned us down, I don't remember it happening.
For the whole trip, there was always a place to stay. People were inviting us to stay with them. We had to turn people down.
Everybody was very gracious and gave us nice meals, and we never even had to put up our tent.
I hate to think about laundry. As far as I know, I wore the same thing every day. I think along the way I lost my shoes, too. I had sneakers when I left. Towards the end of the trip, we didn't have sneakers.
We got used to the press being a little bit in the background. They became pretty good friends over the course of the trip. And there was a point in time where a photographer said, well, you guys should feel honored. This is the second color photo that has ever been in the Boston Globe.
While my brothers were on their trip, the phone calls started coming into the house. We got phone calls that were supportive. Oh, that's a great thing. The kids must be having a ball. But we also got some phone calls from people who were quite free with their disapproval. And the letters started coming. There were letters that said, you guys are fantastic. Here's $1 to help. And there were a number of people who sent $1 or $2. It was very sweet. But then there were letters that were very negative. People who said that my brothers should be removed from the home and my parents should be arrested and thrown in jail.
I mean, some of them were even talking about the poor pony and how we were being cruel to the pony. There was so many letters and complaints that when we were in Jaffrey, New Hampshire, the MSPCA examined King, and he got a complete bill of health.
King is from a breed designed to drag carts of coal from the bottom of mines out every day. King was more than up to the task. And as I like to say, King was probably the adult on that trip.
King was definitely a caretaker. They were in good hands. Hooves.
Every day was great. We would get up, We'd have breakfast, we'd greet King. He would always greet us with a horse's little grumble.
The days would start with us brushing King, cleaning his hooves, tacking him up. We would go over the map, talk about where we were headed, and we would set goals as to where we were going to get to by noon and set another goal for where we would try to get to by the evening.
I think our goal was 20 miles a day, and depending on the terrain, it would be more or less. Tony would drive, then I would drive. I'm not sure what we talked about.
You know, it was pre-Walkman or cell phone or anything, so we didn't have any portable entertainment with us. We were our own entertainment.
I know there was a song that we would sing, which was Up, Up and Away by the Fifth Dimension.
Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? We could float among the stars together, you and I.
To this day, when I hear that song, it brings me right back to the pony cart.
Up and away, my beautiful balloon.
I think as we got closer to the border, that is one of the discussions Tony and I would talk about, whether we were going to get through. Not having any money or a place to stay. All I knew at the time was that it wasn't going to be easy.
So it was probably the 25th day that we were at the border. You know, with all the press and everything that had gone on, the border was a big deal.
I could tell that the officers that were there waiting for us, I think that they were thinking, oh boy, here they are. They were so nice to us, but they didn't let us just pass through.
Somebody came out and said, "Where are you staying tonight?" And we said, "We're not sure." So, well, then you can't cross.
We were probably there for 2 hours. And that's when my mother showed up. She dealt with them. You know, I think of my mother's involvement in the trip. I thought she had nothing to do with it. Once we were gone, it was Tony and I. I suspect, being my mother, that, you know, she was keeping a good eye on us. But that's the only time I really remember her meeting up with us.
She showed up as we were trying to figure out what the next step was going to be. And I don't know what the conversation that ensued was, but about 25 minutes later, we were across the border and went on our way to Montreal.
We were on the road for 27 days when we arrived at the expo.
Coming into Expo, imagine two little kids, 11 and 9, and the people were all cheering and smiling, and we were the arriving conquerors was kind of the atmosphere.
We were greeted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and a mounted police officer came right up to us, and King got very excited about this horse, this big horse coming up to us.
That was kind of the official, they have arrived.
Joining them in Montreal was not the plan as far as I knew. But because it became a famous trip, a bank sponsored flights to send us up to Montreal to join them, which we did. And it was really fun. It was really good to see them.
When we met the family at Expo, first thing my sister, Meg, wanted to do was to make sure that King was okay.
It's a funny thing being reunited with family at that point, we were surrounded by so many people, and we were asked to sign so many autographs. It's a bit of a blur.
Wasn't long after that that we were ushered into a room with international press.
There was a podium loaded with microphones. I had never seen so many microphones.
And here we were, two little kids, taking serious questions from serious reporters.
I'm pretty sure that Tony handled the press conference. I did read that I was shy. Somebody said that Jeff was a little shy.
And once that was over, we were given VIP treatment all over the place. I thought Expo was a hoot. It met my expectations times 10. And when you get to see it as, celebrity, how could you be let down?
And I didn't even know what VIP meant at the time. I do remember asking my mother, Mom, what's VIP? She's a very important person. And I was like, wow, great.
GM had a car that had been cut in half and would unfold mechanically, and they unfolded it and let us sit in it. I just thought that was the coolest thing that ever happened to anybody.
It's an interesting thing. We wanted to go to Expo 67. We got there, and my feeling was once I arrived and spent a few days in the exhibits, okay, we were done. I'm done. The real adventure was the trip up there.
When it was all said and done and we had made the trip home and unloaded King, there was a little bit of publicity after that.
Incidentally, we'd like you to meet Tony's brother, 9-year-old Jeff Whittemore, who made the trip with him.
My brother and I were celebrities. It was everywhere we went. Are you one of the Pony Boys? It was great fun, but it faded and it disappeared. And then we just became regular people again.
Life kind of turned back to normal pretty quick. The trip has been forgotten about for the most part, which maybe is as it should be. But for my brother and I, it was a life-changing and absolutely remarkable experience. didn't really give it a second thought.
You know, I will say that it was really easy for us to leave that first day on the 5th, because I think one of the reasons why it gave us confidence is that we were going to be coming here to Jaffrey in 3 days. So it gave us familiarity when we left. But I think that's all. I think that at that point, we weren't going to just make it to Jaffrey. It was all the way.
So describe your arrival in Jaffrey. That was a great story.
Does everybody here, or anybody here, know Alfred Sawyer? Remember him from? Okay. Alfred Sawyer went out on 124 and met us in his 4-horse rig. And 4 great, big, beautiful horses, and Alfred. And he met us out, and he came to us and said, "I'm here to bring you in." Okay. And he was as good as his word. He led us into it. We basically didn't make it into Jaffrey. Can't say Jaffrey Center. Okay. Jaffrey the village, or whatever, center of town. We made it to the barn, and that's where King stayed while we were in Jaffrey. And it was the beginning of an amazing friendship between the Whittemore family and the Sawyer family that lasted quite some time. And Alfred was a wonderful, wonderful person, and the family was absolutely terrific. But that's how we arrived, and again, by that point, there was press around, and they thought it was kind of a big deal that we got met by the 4-horse team also. And of course, we saw our whole family while we were there. We had a couple of days of fun before we jumped back in the cart and headed north.
Do you remember leaving town, heading out? Did you feel like, I don't know, somehow you were being sent off with a whole town farewell?
No, I do remember that feeling like, okay, the journey is beginning, and maybe the journey was beginning for real at that point, too. But still, there was no doubt and there was no fear. We were ready. Maybe the first days were just a practice run, but yes.
So one of the questions that comes up, it's referenced in the film, but I think everybody always likes to hear it again, is whether you would let your own children do this kind of trip.
Answer that.
Okay. My wife, I told her the story, and before we got married, I asked her to marry, and she said yes. And the stipulation was, if we have kids, you're not telling them the story until they're at least 20 years old. But of course, I told them well before that. And would I let them go? I would let them go on this trip. Preparation was fantastic, and the preparation for our kids would be the same. I would definitely have to talk to my wife about this. People say that there are laws in place that would keep this from happening now. Child labor laws or
Protection, yeah.
Yeah, child protection laws. I'm not sure what that is, but I know that the kids could do this trip today, except for now they have cell phones, and how they would, they'd be texting and streaming, and everybody would put us on, or put them on Instagram. So that would be one of the big differences.
Well, I want to mention something. Because of the publicity that wound up following this thing, we were the safest two kids in the entire country for that 27 days, all right? Everybody watched out for us. The kindness that was shown to us was remarkable, really and truly. It was just an amazing experience. And I feel similar to Jeff as far as my own kids. My wife definitely has put the foot down and said, no, that would not happen. And it's perfectly safe now because, you know, they're 36 and 34, so I don't have anything to worry about at this point, all right? So would I let them do it? I think it was an amazing journey, and if your kids want to take a journey that can be possibly this amazing, you should find a way to make it happen and help them in any way you can.
Well, tell me a little about the life lessons. I mean, I know 9 and 11, it's hard to tell at the time what you take from it, but when you look back from today, what did you learn from the trip? How did it change you? How did it equip you?
I don't know, I'm still willing to talk to anybody, so I guess that part was helpful to me.
I think that the preparation, if you're prepared for us to do something, to get something done, that you move forward and take the risk and well, you of course size up the risks, but if there's a little risk, don't let that stop you. Keep preparing. Preparation for the being prepared for the trip. And being prepared for whatever it is you want to get done is something I've learned from it. And just move forward and don't let fear stop me. I mean, that's something I've learned from it.
I'd love to open it up to people. Well, in the back there, yeah.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm really jealous of the two of you. I would have died to do this. Just would have loved it. So thank you for sharing your story. And I do have a comment and a question. So we've come a long way as a society since you've been on your trip. And I have a half-hour pony, which I was going to share with the kids of Jaffrey tomorrow. But guess what? Insurance companies put the kibosh on me and the Melville Academy, who was going to make this happen. It just makes me really sad that our insurance companies get in the way of some tiny, tiny little piece of what you did. Did you have, I don't know in the 50s what the insurance picture was, but did your mother, obviously you didn't, did your mother have any concerns other than the people who were saying, oh, what a horrible thing you did? The mother did. Your mother did.
Well, you know, our father was an insurance broker. So if there was any concern about insurance, he would have brought it up. So this was in '67. I don't think it was as much of an issue as it is today.
Yeah. I think, yeah, here.
I'm sure when you're a teacher, when you went back to school, I'm sure you aced the paper that said, what did I do this summer? My question is, among your chums, your childhood friends, when you said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, what was their reaction?
Did everyone hear the question?
Well, let's see, I was in 3rd grade before the trip. My teacher had found out what we were going to be doing, and she called me up in front of the class so the kids could all hear what I was going to do, and it actually turned into a rather uncomfortable kind of a teasing session on me. So yeah, my friends and classmates pretty much teased me. I don't know if you had that experience, Tony, but...
Well, it was just another excuse to tease me. I was teased pretty mercilessly all through school, you know.
So
it was, we were kind of different to start with. Our mother was unique. And I remember my grade school experience being somewhat miserable as far as being teased goes. And that was just another thing to tease me about. Didn't make it any special. It was just teasing.
Well, I remember this particular point, my teacher's name was Miss Fitz. And when I started 4th grade and I came back, she was so nice to me. The kids were all hanging out with me. So it was great it probably lasted 2 weeks.
And Tony, did you ever encounter Mr. Jenkins again? Did he ever take back that remark?
Mr. Jenkins several times. All right. Most of the encounters were okay, though. He wasn't a bad person. He just, he met my mother, and my mother was kind of a force to be reckoned with. And he left me alone fairly much. My grade school experience wasn't horrible, but I'm not a very good student. Never really was. But I was good at what I was good at. So life has been very good to me. Maybe undeservedly so, but life has been very good to me. I have great friends who are right here in this room who could attest to that. Sir, you've been waving a couple of times now. Why don't you let us know what you...
Practical matter, I'm interested in weather and food. Where did your food come from, and how did you deal with the weather? Did you just stay inside if it was raining, or did you go out in the elements?
Oh, if it rained, we still went. Every time it rained. As far as food goes, we turned it away constantly. The generosity of the people who are on this trip, it's almost difficult to put into words. They wanted to make sure that we were safe, okay, well-fed, had a comfortable, warm place to sleep. They took care of the pony. The pony got grain most every day, plenty of water. And it was all the generosity of the people that we encountered along the way. I'd love to say that we can take credit for all of it, but it's not true. The people who along the way made this possible to do. And we are very grateful that we live in a place that fosters that kind of generosity of spirit.
Good for them.
Yes.
Did you feel, did you believe that the advance letters that your mom wrote helped generate the awareness of your coming and that hospitality? Would you have done it without that?
Well, I don't know. I'm not that sophisticated a planner, especially at that age. The truth is, I never sat down and said, geez, if the letters didn't go out, what would have happened?
Well, I think that did make a difference. It made everybody aware, and we would come into a town, and often we were met by the police, and they would escort us to the family that we would be staying with. So in the film, I said, after 5 days, I didn't know. That's because after 5 days, I couldn't remember who it was or where we were going to stay. We just knew that it was this town, and when we got to that town, they were waiting for us and escorting us to the place we'd stay, and they would as Tony said, take really good care of us.
I think there was a question in the back corner there. Okay.
Who was filming the live streaming of you guys on the...
That was an Associated Press newsreel that we found. Yeah, thank goodness we found it. Yeah, and I'm sure there was other footage too, but we never were able to track it down. It's really a shame how things just get lost over the years. It's been 55 years, but Associated Press had that, and they had never transferred it. I guess they'd probably developed the film at some point, but they had never transferred it to video or anything. So we were the first people to look at it since it was shot, and it was never clear that it was ever made into anything either. It might never have been broadcast. Yeah.
So when you were at the border, your mom showed up. You obviously knew about the letters that she had sent and had. And I think it was your voice that said, at that point you thought, I wonder, has she been sort of in places? Did you ever talk about that as a family later, or was it sort of like that notion of, we were this, it was big, now we're home, we're normal people, we're not going to find out exactly what our mom's influence was?
After the trip, Tony and I never talked about it. We did the trip. We experienced it. We were moving on. We never, and at that age, we never thought to talk about those kinds of things with our parents. Just never occurred to us.
Well, let's follow up. We did actually find out. The first time the movie was shown in public, all right, our older siblings told us that Mom was never much more than an hour away from us for the entire trip, okay? Right.
Now, I don't believe that is true.
Okay, well...
And I'll tell you why, because that was something that showed up in the press. And I think it was a line my mother used because it was a way she could deflect the negative. It's easy to say, yeah, I'm never more than an hour away. But if you think about it, from Needham to Montreal is a 5-hour drive. So it took us 27 days. So day 14, she was only a 2.5-hour ride from us, wherever, if she was at home. I think she spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. So she was never that far away. But I think that line, that she was never more than an hour away, was just to take pressure off her that the press was putting on.
To follow up on that, did she ever say to you or talk about how some of those negative letters affected her?
Did you hear the question? It was whether their mother ever talked about how the negative letters and phone calls affected her.
That would absolutely destroy me.
I did not get the sense from my mother that it disturbed her. I think she was more annoyed at the people who sent them. However, I think it did disturb my older sister, who had to deal with this live at the time. And to be honest, I didn't even know about this till I was much older, and it disturbed me when I started reading through these letters and hearing about the phone calls. Because when we got back, we didn't hear any of that.
Yes?
I think in the movie it was stated that you did about 20 miles a day, something like that. How long did it take you with your car?
We were on the road for 27 days.
We were on the road for 27 days, and this was kind of one of the fun parts of it. We'd know we'd have to be in this town, and along the way we would, okay, it's noon, look, where are we? Okay, we're here, we need to be there. Sometimes it would be early afternoon, sometimes later afternoon, and sometimes we wouldn't make it because it was hillier than expected, and we would have to do what Tony talked about in the movie, which was knock on someone's door. So.
This gentleman's.
Yeah, so.
It's a wonderful film, and you guys are obviously the heroes of the film, but in a deeper sense, actually, I think your mom is the star of this film. And I would like to, of course, all of us talk about our mother in a third person sense,
Well, my mother had an interesting upbringing. Her parents were caretakers when she was little on estates in Connecticut and Greenwich, and during the Depression, that was where she was. And she had her oldest brother was very sick for till he was. What was it that he? I don't know. So, he had rheumatic fever. He was 16. So he was sick. That's from my sister Wendy.
This, by the way, is Wendy.
And so she must have been an interesting experience being in the Depression with this beautiful houses, and they took great, they had use of these beautiful cars to go to the beach, and there's that part of it. Plus her oldest brother, her mother wasn't paying as much attention to her because she was dealing with the older brother. And then they moved to Dublin. My mother grew up in high school, I think, was in Dublin, New Hampshire. So, she had quite a different bringing up.
My mother had two ropes that were pretty close to 35 or 40 feet long, mounted in a tree for us to have a swing in. All right? Well, we never put the piece of wood on the bottom of the swing. So we tied a log onto that was about this wide. So on one could get on the log, and the other one could wrap the rope around and use it to pump him. I mean, she thought that was the greatest thing that ever was done. And we were going 30, 40 feet in the air on that swing. She thought that was terrific. So, and we had lawnmowers, old lock lawnmowers, and I don't remember exactly how young we were when we started using them, but they're big reels this big, and there were two mounted on the sides, and we, as young kids, walked around the yard mowing the lawn. So she always believed that we had the ability if somebody would allow us to do it. And that's kind of how she brought us up and how she lived. Did she make mistakes? Oh, yeah. Okay, absolutely. But we are who we are because my mother was who she was. That's kind of where, I guess if there's something to get out of the book.
It's kind of sad to bring the formal part of this evening to an end because it's been so interesting, but we do have a small gift for the three of you, which is our traditional gift for...
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen.
Before we close the official thing, I want to tell you that if it weren't for this man here and his team, this wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have been able to relive my youth for the last 2 years in front of wonderful people like you. And I want to say thank you to you.
Thank you. These guys are the stars.
Just two quick announcements. One is that next week, we hope you will join us again, either in person or on live stream, when Littleton Alston and Ashley Olson will join us to talk about the legacy of Willa Cather. And the other is that we have a reception waiting, and I hope you haven't said everything you have to say, because I think there should be a lot of questions to ask. It's right, well, out that door and then that way. And with that, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It was wonderful.
It was a great,
It was just wonderful. I just
Well,
really enjoyed it.
it was a terrific crowd. Tony was
It's
fantastic.
a very good crowd for
Yeah.
us, too. Yeah.